welcome Roger Lobb from Sandbox Farms. So I'll hand it over to you, Roger, to introduce yourself and jump into your presentation, and then I'll introduce the new members after his presentation today. All right, so I'll hand it over to you, Roger. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ashley. Um, so my name is Roger Lobb, and I was just asked to share a little bit about my farming journey and where I'm at today, different technologies that I'm using, and what we're looking at moving forward. So to begin with, I guess I would start with I've not um, I haven't grown up in a farming community. I wasn't from a farming family, although my dad did have his degree in agriculture, but he never really spent much time working in that field. Um, I was a full-time pastor doing ministry in a small town in southern Alberta, and my joke is sort of I worked hard to convert them, but they converted me, and then I got into full-time farming. Is um, sort of the way I like to introduce it. But essentially, I started with just one quarter section, and it was I'm always interested. I'm an entrepreneur, always interested in machinery and different things. And I saw this quarter section for sale on Kijiji, and that was before most of the farmers were looking for land on Kijiji. Nobody knew you could actually buy land for Kijiji, and bought a quarter section of land, and then that went pretty good. And a year or so later, I bought another one, and this was dry land down in a very dry area in southern Alberta. It wasn't highly sought after, but just I was able to buy a few more, and so that was in 2008, and then in 2015, I retired from full-time ministry, and wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do, but shortly after that, um, I got the opportunity to buy irrigated land in Medicine Hat. And essentially, that the resale value had gone up fairly substantially in those first 7 years. So I was able to sell one quarter of dry land, and then that'd be a down payment on a quarter section of irrigation, and just was able to get land to rent and slowly grew the farm after that. So that's sort of how I got into farming. Um, Few things about me, I guess, that I've always been interested in electronics and technology from the time I was, probably around 10 years old. I was taking apart anything, stereos or radios and stuff like that. So I went into electronics engineering right out of high school, and that was in Okanagan College back in the late 80s. So um, I had had some experience then working with PLCs, um, computers. The IBM compatible computer was just coming out then, so we were building those and learning how to program and stuff. So I really enjoy that, but I didn't go into that field. I went into sawmilling and logging, and then went into full-time ministry after that. So I say that because knowing that this is a group looking at technology, I've always had an interest in it. And that electronics engineering gives me kind of a well, I can't program stuff today. I haven't stayed up with all of that. I have an understanding of what it can do for you and how you can use it to manipulate machinery. So when I started farming, first thing I did was buy uh, an Outback light bar for guidance, and that was most most of the bigger farms were all fully GPS at that time, but it was a new thing for me, and so I've never farmed using the old school markers or foam markers. Just started right away with GPS and a light bar. And I had been told, and I think there's a lot of truth to it, that GPS was probably the biggest change in agriculture since the tractor was invented. And when you think about it, you kind of see that the tractor changed things from using livestock, changed it substantially. But really, they just made bigger tractors. They haven't really added a whole lot to them. Nothing really changed until now that we all of a sudden we have this GPS, and pretty much all the technology you use in your fields depends on having that GPS connectivity. So as I started farming and started buying equipment, I continued um, upgrading the GPS equipment. I'd buy an old tractor and I'd spend more on the GPS in it, just because of what it could do for us. So um, I'm thinking about why some of the technology. And one of the things, like irrigation land is quite expensive. Just growing the normal conventional crops, wheat, durum, things like that. Um, it's not really possible to make your land payments, so you have to continue looking at innovative cropping solutions, or becoming more efficient. And so technology, I think, really plays a big role in that, as far as being able to be more efficient or being able to grow very specialized crops. Um, so with irrigation, one of the first things I did was to put all of my irrigation management online. So there's a cellular card and a computerized panel in every one of my pivots. You just have to convert them over. It's fairly easy process to put a computerized panel on an old pivot. The pivot could be 50 years old, but you can put a computerized panel on it, and then it has a cell card in it, and then you can use your app or you can use your computer, and it gives you the option. Like, for one thing, I can farm a lot more land. I can manage a lot more pivots if I can just open up my phone and see where they're all at, what they're all doing. Um, I start and stop them remotely. I put uh, a Nelson valve, a water valve on every one of them, so I could shut the water off, turn the pump on, everything just remotely from my phone. And so this year I'm running 23 pivots. You just simply can't do that if you have to drive out to every single one to start it. Um, you can just quickly scan and see how things are going. Then it also gives you, with that telemetry on there, it gives you the ability to manage your irrigation. So you can build speed tables fairly easily. So I can speed it up through the low areas, slow it down on the hilltops or sandy areas, to manage your irrigation a little bit. You can put in a table like that. And then if you have even more need uh, for different watering rates, I can put variable rate irrigation, VRI. So I have several pivots that have that, where I have a real low spot with high salinity in the soil, or a slough. You can manage your irrigation that way with VRI. So you put those on and they control the individual nozzles, and you do all that. You write the program and everything on the computer, and then it just uploads to the panel. And so that's part of the technology that I'm using there. Um, One of the areas I branched into a number of years ago was organic. Um, I'm not 100% organic farm, but started going into the organic because, again, um, looking for returns. There's a bit of a chance of higher return when you're growing organic. And so going into organic, though, the big thing is can't use conventional fertilizers and pesticides or herbicides for weed control. And so um, I would say that's probably the biggest or the hardest thing to grow organically, is because of the weeds. We have lots of cattle feedlots in the area, so I get my nutrition, my plant nutrition, from that manure. But but along with that comes, you introduce a lot of weeds into your fields. when you're using manure, and then they continue to get out of control. So I went to a camera guided inter-row cultivator. I have a picture of it there. You can see the just see the back end of the cultivator. This is one of my hemp crops. Organic hemp is probably one of the best money generating crops for me on the organic side, and we sell most of it to Fresh Hemp Foods in Manitoba. And you can see there it does a pretty good job that cultivating in between the rows. That's um, that's a 43-foot cultivator basically because I have a 43-foot air drill, and so the cultivator matches the size of my drill. You can see it right here and sort of down the middle, there's one tram line. And I've just come up with this system that works nice for me. I only put one tram line, not two tram lines. And the reason for that is some of the crop will come back under a tire. This, if you can see my cursor over here, that's where one of the tires is traveling, and it tramples it a bit. It'll kill some of the crop, but um, this with a tram line, with only one tram line, I always know which direction I plant it in. And it's important for that cultivator because you adjust the shovels to match your drill perfectly. So you have to be exactly the same width as your drill, and you have to be going the same direction that you planted in. And so my drill is on 10-inch spacing, and I have a 7-inch shovel in between. And so it does a pretty good job. It does not get it all. The next picture will show you a little bit. Um, you can see when the plants are a little bit smaller like that, you can see clearly you can't get everything right up to the edge all the time. Um, and hemp is interesting. We've learned over the years that you better get at it before it gets to be 8 inches tall. If it gets too much taller, the wind it'll shift over from the wind, and then there's a camera that watches, and you can set the parameters on the camera for how many rows it tries to pick up. But if the wind is blowing at all, once it's much more than 8, 10 inches tall, it leans, and then the camera moves the cultivator over and starts taking out the rows because the head of the plant is a couple inches over. And so we've just learned you've got to get in there. 4 inches is about ideal, which is what this is right about there. And then you still have to go very slowly then because it'll bury the shovels will throw a little bit into the row, which is what you want for weed control, but it'll bury them. If you're doing we do winter wheat as part of the organic rotation, and winter wheat's tough, so you can just about bury it, and we can travel a lot faster with that, and it does an excellent job in the winter wheat. But this technology has saved a number of crops. Like you can see the weed pressure in that field, and just without that ability to cultivate that tight to your plants and get rid of we're getting rid of 70% of our weeds essentially, and maybe a little more. But there are times when we've had fields where you would just plow it under if you didn't have this ability to go in there and fix it up. Um, One of the things like this, I didn't have a picture, but sometimes we see just a thick mat of maybe wild oats or millet or something in there, very similar color to the hemp plants. And that's where it gets very, very difficult to get the camera to actually be able to distinguish. The camera's picking up the rows. You can set the parameters for heights and for colors, but it's very difficult when you have a thick mat in there. It just has a hard time picking it up. We play around with a bunch of different things. Camera height sometimes can affect it. Sometimes it's just the time of the day, and the way the sun is shining. And sometimes we just had to shut down and come back, and it almost works better at night when you have no natural light and it's just your LED light on the camera. It sometimes gives you a little bit easier time to distinguish where those rows are. In this field, that wouldn't have been too bad. It's not. There's a lot of fields where you get higher weed pressure than that. The other thing we've been getting into started last year into drones. We're using them primarily for spraying. Um, and so last year was just kind of a trial with it, and we were really happy with their performance. Um, they they do work very well. I think the coverage is very good. Also, we weren't sure about it, but I bought the next model up. This is a DJI T50, and then the T100 came out. And unfortunately, about a month after I bought the T100, they're advertising the T150. So I can see what's going to happen here. They just continue to improve on that technology. But they are they've been very helpful. This is my seed canola field that you can see. And in the background, you can see those tents, those little tents. There's two of them in that picture, and they would be in the male seed bays there. Um, with conventional sprayer, we're going in. We'll go in the evening because most of the time the bees will be in their tents in the evening. We're spraying fungicides here, but I first of all fly it with. We've got a smaller drone with a um, high density camera that we map the field with, but that will also give us when we map the field, we can see all of the we can see all of the tents, and then we can just go in and make a no spray zone over the tents. So when we fly, like the fungicide isn't that harmful to the bees, but you still don't want to spray it inside their tents. And so it just flies and it can shut off. We can use it for when we have grasshoppers has been a thing the last few years because we've been so dry. And then you get grasshoppers on the edge of your field. They move in from the edge. So if you catch them early enough, you can spray the perimeters. And we've often hired the airplane to come in and just spray the perimeter. And now we can do it with the drone, and you're much more accurate. Um, and just because they can turn on a dime and don't leave the field, and so you make a nice little map, and it can fly in there. We've spot sprayed as well. The agronomist for the seed canola found an area um, where some of the other varieties of canola got away, so they wanted that cleaned up. And so we flew the mapping drone, showed him the picture. He said, yeah, he could see it, visually identify the entire area and it was only like 2 or 3 acres, but that would affect the hybridity if we hadn't been able to get it. And then you just send the drone out in the field and it sprays that specific spot. So I've been very, very helpful for that. But we also have been using it just for broad acres. We used it, we trialed desiccating a field of potatoes with it, and it did remarkably well. Had just as good a results as going in with the ground rig. So we're fairly pleased with it, and going to continue to experiment with it. Um, and and it's also becoming recognized. Even the government agencies are now proposing that they relax some of the restrictions they had on the drones. So basically moving towards where anything that's registered for aerial qualifies for a drone. And so that's going to open up. I think that's just going to open up a lot more. You'll see a lot more opportunity in the drone sector. For me, it's really good because you can see in the background there's quite a few buildings here, and I'm in an area very close to the city of Medicine Hat, um, and and so I can't even hire the airplanes to come in a lot of areas. They won't come in even to spray just because of the population density. Whereas, but and the drone. doesn't even fly as high as high as the ground rig sprayer. It's spraying at 9 feet above the crop, and so it's not very invasive. So there's a lot of benefits I see to it, and we're going to keep experimenting. One of the sideline um, jokes that I kind of bring up is my son. I say he's been training to fly this drone his entire life because you go and you watch him spraying, and he started when he was 16 or 17 flying, spraying for me with the drone. And I'd come out to the field to check on him, and there he is sitting in his lawn chair with a controller in his lap, and just looked like he's in a basement playing on his Nintendo. And so he's got a lot of experience, and it's a way that it's something I'm going to talk about a little bit too. But we need next generation involvement, and with the technology the way it's going, it's something that they're very comfortable with. So that's just a sidelined benefit. I wouldn't have been able to send him out in my 120-foot ground rig sprayer, but I can send him out with a drone. We also started again just for economics. We moved into growing potatoes a couple years ago, so that we're just in the start of our third season of growing potatoes right now. And I formed a joint venture with two other farms, mainly because of the high cost of getting into potatoes. So we're sharing the cost, but then we also share our land base. And again, we went into it for organic, so we're growing organic potatoes. Um, and that was sort of our window into that industry. It's pretty hard to get a contract to grow potatoes when you don't grow potatoes. They tend to only give potato contracts to potato growers. So being that we were a niche, the three of us have organic land, and so we were able to say, well, we can come in and produce. We can grow organic potatoes for you, and we have a large enough land base that we can actually do it at a fairly high scale. So the first year we did it, we were the sole Canadian supplier for a little potato company and they were all sold through Costco. So 2 years ago, if you bought little potatoes from Costco, you were eating potatoes off of our farm. And so again, we're getting into something new, and there's all kinds of technology that is involved in that. This planter that I've got a picture of, they're a belt planter, and they're fairly sophisticated. It took me a while to figure out that this thing knows more than I do. And I'm out in the field digging, trying to set the spacing and the computer is telling me this is what it's doing. And I finally kind of realized after the end of one or two fields, you realize that thing has counted every potato that fell down. There's the little beam that falls through a triple's laser or infrared eye, and while that potato is falling through, it's counting it and it's also measuring it. And so they want different seed spacing depending on the size of the seed piece. And so those little eyes are counting everything, and you can push a little learn button and it'll adjust every time you move into a different seed lot. It'll adjust your spacing, and it's pretty accurate. At the end of the field, it'll tell you planted 23,552 potatoes in here with an average spacing of this, this, and that. And then it speeds up the belts and slows the belts down to adjust the spacing and adjust to your ground speed. So there's a fair bit of technology on some of this stuff. We're looking into we've demoed a couple of optical sorters, because that's one of the difficult things, is just meeting the grade specs. And so we're looking at different optical sorters. The first one we tried, it works well, but not quite. They're not quite there yet. Most of the optical sorters don't do the best job, it seems, until the potatoes have been washed, because they're still having a hard time with that, with their electronic eye seeing the difference between scab and a piece of dirt, or some of those type of defects. It's easy for them to kick out the green ones. They can pick up one on green or a cut piece. But when it gets down to some of the more skin defects that we're trying to get rid of, they have a hard time being able to pick up on that. So that's sort of our um, one of our latest things that we're working on. Um, Ashley, you'd asked me just to kind of list a number of things that I'd like to see more of from the producer side. Um, so here's just a few of the thoughts that I've had that I've come across. Well, the first is the need for the right algorithms, um, and programming for specific crops, etc. The As I mentioned when I showed you the interrow cultivator there, like we've had some very, very frustrating days trying to get trying to get that cultivator to be able to distinguish, that camera to be able to distinguish between the weed and the crop, especially under heavy weed pressure. And I my my theory when I look at it, I go, if I can look at it from the cab of the tractor and I can tell where the row is, why can't that camera? And I do think the camera has the capability of it. But especially when we're in niche crops, and I would consider hemp to be a niche crop. It's there's just not, I don't think the companies would bother to put in the effort or spend the money to develop that algorithm specific for hemp, so that it would be a lot easier for me to cultivate. That the market may not be big enough, would be my thought, as why it's prohibitive for them. But we're facing the same thing with the optical sorters. So we had an optical sorter, and we had one field that has about 15 to 20% scab on the skin of that potato, and it's not. You can rub it off with your thumb. The potato's fine, but the consumer won't want to buy a bag that's got potatoes with scab on it. I can see it, but it is very similar to a piece of dirt stuck to the edge of that potato. So until it's washed, it doesn't really show up. But we had the optical sorter we were demoing was a Downs. It's made in France, and they came out, took pictures with their cameras and stuff, and then went back, and they were going to write algorithms, because you can see the difference. So they should be able to, theoretically, they believe they can as well. But that's 8 months ago. They still haven't got an algorithm built, still haven't got a program built for us that can actually do it. And there's several other companies selling them as well. And that's sort of just the stage we're in. So from a producer, that's what I'm finding. This technology can do almost anything. But have we got somebody who knows how to use it? Have we got somebody that's actually done the programming? I'm going to guess I haven't done any programming lately with AI. I did it years ago. I knew how long and painstaking it was to write a program. I think now with AI, I'm expecting that we'll see this type of thing explode as that technology gets even better. The drone, for instance, I've got that mapping drone, and I was sold on all the things that it can do, all the wonderful things that it can do. Like it's such high density, you can see bugs and stuff in the field. So I bought it thinking this is just going to be amazing. You can just go in, we'll use maybe a third of the insecticide if we have a bug problem. But once you get into it, you really realize that we're using DJI. They haven't got the programs for us. I can't just take a map of that, send it into them. Oh, okay, off I go, and I can spot spray. It has the capability, and that's what they sold me on, but they haven't got the support or the ability to actually utilize it right now. So that's one thing. The second is we need to have technicians to run this for us on our farm. Um, and because in reality, like um, the majority of our farm workers are fantastic workers. I had a crew of guys that ran 24 hours here, that ran right through the night. Um, because we have to get stuff done. They're hard workers. They know what they're doing when it comes to machinery. They know what they're doing when it comes to the field work. But when it comes to this technology, I almost need an IT specialist running around the farm just to keep the IT going. Um, and and I guess it seems like there is a bit of a disconnect between those people that are in that industry and those that are on in the producer side. So finding somebody that can come and program this stuff, I'd love to have somebody on staff working for me that just takes care of all of that stuff. It's for me, like as I mentioned, I have a little bit of a background in it, so I know what it can do, but I don't have the time to sit down and figure it all out for every piece of equipment on the farm. So if there's anyone here listening that has to do with education, running universities or educational minister, this is one of my things that I've been looking at. Um, and I keep saying, when you talk about farming, and somebody was to mention that they wanted to become a farmer, the the rhetoric has always been, well, you can't get into farming today; it's too expensive. So if your parents don't farm and hand you farm, you're not going to be able to get into farming. And I'd like to change that because for me, I did change that um, for myself. But also, I don't know why we have to think that the only way you can be a farmer is to own a farm. We would never say that to somebody who wanted to go into to be an electrician. We'd never say, well, you can't be an electrician unless your dad has a electrical company. We would encourage them to go into that trade and work for somebody, maybe eventually buy that company from the owner or buy into it with shares or something like that. So I think we should be encouraging people to go into farming as a trade. And so I'd love to see journeyman. I'd like to see a red seal journeyman farmer, and you can go to college and take farming as a trade. You would be able to specialize in some of the technology side of things that we need, and those are kind of the people that we need on our farms um, to run it. So to kind of get somebody that's got good understanding of the farm and what the farm needs are, but also a good understanding of that technology. So there's an opportunity, I think, for educational institutions to dive in here. Um, and then the final thing I guess I would say is that we're coming across a lot is the need for all of this tech to communicate with each other's platforms. So there's a number of different things that I mentioned that I'm using. I've got a Medium planter, I've got a DJI drone, and I've got a Hatzenbitzler interval cultivator. They all know exactly what they did in every field, and yet if I want to get that information, I've got to go to each individual platform, decipher it, download it. So guys, some of them are working on it, and I've actually gone to John Deere. I'm converting all of my equipment, whether it's John Deere or not. In fact, the majority isn't John Deere, but they're auto steer, GPS, um, and the John Deere Ops Center. I've kind of found to be about the best one out there right now for being able to synchronize all of your data. And then it also synchronizes with our accounting software. We use Farm Credits Ag Expert. Um, it's not my favorite accounting software. Sorry, AVN, I know your dad works for them. Um, it's not my favorite software, but it works, and my bookkeeper loves it, so then I'm happy. But it does synchronize with the John Deere Ops Center. And the more we're getting into different things like, so the organic industry as well as the potato industry now becomes, the potatoes fall under Health Canada's processing and food table potatoes. And so we're into the Canada Gap program for the food health and safety program. And there is just an inordinate amount of um, data that you have to track and put in. So we've gone to the John Deere Ops Center so that every one of our tractors that's pulling the planters and the rehillers, all of that information that we have in there synchronizes into the John Deere Ops Center. But there's a lot of work I think that could be done. Like our drone doesn't synchronize with any of that. So and even the different drones that are out there with their cameras. There's a company out there that will show you where all your rocks are in the field, but you have to be able to send in the right file format for them, and they can only do it with their one drone. And so as these companies are developing this technology, it's very proprietary and it seems to be all off on its own. But for me as a producer, it that becomes just an extra thing that I have to work on. So those are I know I've gone a little bit over my half hour here to share, so I'll stop there. But those are some of the things that I'm thinking of right now.
Perfect. Thank you, Roger. That was a great presentation, and we definitely need to hear like what farmers actually need, not just making assumptions as well. So I think that's important information to share with this group. I just go to the chat for a moment before we open it up for questions. Talat said they're making an agriculture UGV and agri products. And your presentation directly hit the spot. So he left his email in the chat if you want to reach out to him directly as well. Um, Kate said she loves the beehive protection idea, as that wouldn't have occurred to most as well. And then Chuck also made a comment about his team has successfully been able to create robot mission maps using drone imagery. However, the lack of consistency in the software platforms is definitely a challenge as well. So I think some consistent challenges that you were talking about as well. Okay, Brad, do you have your hand up first?
Hey, Roger. Yeah, that was great, and it's good to hear from an actual producer in this group too, to see how they're adopting technology. Just one question I had, when you started your presentation, you talked to the why and what your reasoning is behind adopting the technology, and a lot of that has to do with you're running. It's pretty difficult to make money when you're running on irrigated land there in Alberta. Can you speak to how some of these technologies might have helped your bottom line? Have you been able to measure that? Have you been able to see any success there?
Well, I guess certainly in terms of the organic industry, we can grow if we can get that organic crop. Oftentimes, we're getting about double the price, um, and so. But I guess you would say you get double the price, but you get half the yield, so you're no better off economically. And with the technology, though, I'm not seeing much of a difference in yields in many cases. So I'll see a slight drop in yield, but if I can get in there and cultivate that field, the weeds, that was probably one of the biggest things. Weeds and nutrition. And I have a source of manure where I can get manure for the field. So there's my nutrition taken care of. But if I can't control the weeds, I can't grow anything. And I've had a number of crops that were just complete write-offs. We tried organic lentils and virtually got nothing. Even with the cultivator, we did cultivate inter-row, but they're so slow in coming back that the weed pressure just keeps coming. Now I know and this is something I've been looking at those little robots, and I know they use them in lettuce and cabbage and stuff in higher, more intense agriculture. But does something like that work on a broad scale? where you can do 1,000 acres. How many of those little robots do you need? I don't know, but essentially it allows you to control your weeds so that you can actually get a decent yield on the crop. I guess to answer the question directly, that's the main thing. But then it also allows you getting into things like the potatoes or like getting into seed canola. The better technology you have to be able to do it in a more efficient way, you can scale up. Whereas when if you're just doing it working by hand, you just can't cover that many acres.
So it's more of an enabler rather than a cost savings at this point.
That's
Based
right. Well, it actually it costs. You have to spend the money on it, but it allows you to be able to get into some of those niche markets, and then it also allows you to be able to scale up.
and sorry, I'm gonna cheat and make this two questions, Ashley.
It's okay.
You'll have a lot of conventional farmers surrounding you in that area you're in right now too. Are they curious at all about what you're doing? Do you get a lot of questions from them or interest from them on what's going on?
Oh yeah, we talk quite a bit, and I'm an open book. People have influenced me heavily by sharing their ideas and their discoveries, and I try to do the same. So yeah, we get along well, and collaborate. I mean, for one thing, like one of the feedlots, we work very closely together. He gives me his manure, and he'll come and spread it, and he's happy because there's a huge expense for him cleaning out his crops and hauling it onto his own land, and his own land is getting saturated. It can get high in certain nutrients over time, and so he likes to have other land nearby to spread it on. But there's a huge cost, so I'll pay the whole cost of that, and I'll trade him back for straw because he needs straw for his feedlot. So even though he's conventional, and I'm growing organic, there doesn't seem to be any animosity there. I don't know what he says behind my back, but if I can keep my fields clean, then he probably doesn't have a problem with it. Doesn't seem to be.
No, that's great. Thanks, Roger.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions for Roger? Ian.
Thanks a lot, Roger. I thought that was excellent. I just want to sort of point out some light bulb moments that came from some of the things that you said and just make us think about that. So maybe not so much questions, but just I'll throw them out and you can comment. Your comment about IT people engaged at the farm as employees. I think that's very much where it's going to go. The problem is that those people that we want to attract are going to want 50 to 52 weeks of work a year. So how do we make that happen on a farm? And is that something we maybe need to think about the ag consulting industry having maybe some of those people employed because then they can distribute them further across more farms and then have full-time work for those type of people. You talked about camera resolution and trying to find the weeds and stuff like that. And I'm a big photographer in a lot of the work that I do with the Ministry of Agriculture. And I'm always disappointed no matter how hard I try to get the picture. It never looks like what my eyes saw, right? And so it's that trying to find that space. And that makes me think about the farm droid and it GPSing every single seed it puts in the ground so that you can put the mechanical weeder in there and it's just taking out everything that's not in that map pointing to where that plant was thing. And so, again, marrying technologies together to find the answers to what you're talking about, because doing that with your vision directed cultivator and stuff like that, I think are important. The other thing was the idea of how do I say it? The in-row weeding is the big critical piece that's so hard and the thing that we really need the technology to come up with in terms of some of the robotic stuff and that. Would you agree with that? Because your cultivator it's advanced, but it's a cultivator that's been around for a long time in terms of that the technology of taking weeds out between the rows, but marrying that with something that'll take them out. Well, I guess what I'm getting at is I'm going to use Bob Kerr as an example, who the people here on the call will know is the organic tomato farmer down in Chatham, and he's got a laser, carbon robotics laser weeder. And here's what I'm getting at: the farmers keep telling the technology vendors, you need to change your technology to meet me out in the field. And I'm saying it has to be a two-way street. So Bob has changed the way he lays out his organic carrots now to accommodate that laser weeder type of thing, right? And so with your hemp there, could you change the seeding so that it was GIS enabled, so that and you plant those plants further apart so that you had a defined 7 inches between each one, say like in a corn crop, and then you didn't have to use vision. You could use that GPS signal positioning as a way to the technology, take everything out that's between these 2 points. Any comments?
Yeah, that would work excellent. In fact, I thought you could, if you could guarantee that the spacing of those plants was exactly 7 inches apart. I could also still do it with my cultivator and go at 90 degrees to each pass and do the same thing. And I actually did a trial of that a little bit, because I thought, well, I only need a plant every 10 inches. A hemp plant becomes a big plant, so I seed a little heavier, and then just cultivate in the row, and then go back and go against the row and take out those ones in between. So it was just it was sort of a trial. The big thing for me is having one of those planters that can do it with a small hemp seed, that could also do it with our, like that can meet all the different seed varieties, and have it large enough that I can seed, because I've got 1,000 acres of hemp in this year. So do I have a planter that can get that can actually feasibly seed that many acres within the window that I have to get it seeded in, and then are my tillage tools large enough to be able to cover that ground? So that's kind of why I went with the conventional cultivator, because now I'm not buying a new planter, I'm using the drill that I already have. It's 43 feet. So that's some of it, like and what I've seen is in a lot of the technology, it is kind of designed for almost more large scale greenhouse. Like this is 10, 20 acre stuff, not 1,000 acre stuff. So that's sort of just where I'm at. You'd never
Yes,
make
all
money
I'm
growing.
saying is that
Yeah.
both the technology side and the farming side, we need to have more conversations and look broader than the paradigm of what we think it should look like out in the field, so that we can find those solutions to those problems, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I think Talat, you have your hand up next.
I think my turn. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm on the move. That's why there can be a little noise. Sorry for that. I'm Talat. I also ask Lobb about our situation. We are a startup company building the agriculture robotics and as this kind of decision support systems. So we are right now working on the tomato and the cotton. And also, as you may know, I'm from Turkey. Is hemp plantation also is legalized in Turkey. So we are focusing on this topic. Mr. Lobb, I would like to really talk with you about your experience so that we can shape up our robot and maybe, hopefully, we can come to Canada and make a demonstration. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions? Joe?
I don't know how you timed it, but I just got my FCC email newsletter, and Roger's story was the first one. So I put the link in the chat. Roger, you're pretty strong on technology, and you've used words like algorithms, which typical farmers don't. They run the other way when you use that word. You talked a little bit about AI. If you can vision out 3, 5, 7 years, how do you think that technology can help you, do a better job on the farm? Any thoughts there on that? I know we're lagging in the ag sector for adoption of AI and use of AI, which is fine. But I hate when our sector leaves money on the table because we're too busy to figure out some of these new innovations and how to adopt them. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, probably have to think about it more. When I mentioned AI, I was thinking specifically of how it's changed programming, where back in the day, I would have to think of my if-then loop and how I was going to put it and
Sure.
where I'd put the other parameters. Whereas now you just tell it, this is what I want you to do, and it does it for you. So,
Yeah.
so you should be able to take all of the data that you're getting and process it a million times faster than what we could do all. So that's where I think they should be able, why I think it should explode in the industry because we've got this technology today that can do almost anything if you can tell it what you want it to do. And so I think using
At a
AI,
at a at a fifth of the cost or 5% of the cost, right? That's
right?
our programmers are saying they can do what they used to do in a month in a day.
Yes, that's exactly. So then I'm thinking it should explode.
Sure.
We have the equipment, that technology. I don't think it's actually something the farmer's going to even realize. Like I won't even know that you used AI to build this program. All I want is you to have this platform for me to be able to use to distinguish weeds, disease, whatever it is, if we're talking cameras.
Well, it reduces the risks you mentioned about niche products that, maybe you couldn't program something because that was $100,000 of programming. But if it's 5 grand,
Right.
organic hemp, yeah, maybe we can do
Yes.
that now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point. Thanks for those thoughts.
Mhm.
It's something we're all trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
bring those values, that value to the farmers faster.
Mhm.
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 Perfect. Any other last questions for Roger?
No, thanks for sharing. Like,
Yes. Yeah,
it,
thank you so
I,
much,
I have
Roger,
one.
for Oh,
I have
sorry,
one.
Chuck, go ahead.
Hey, Roger. So how's your growing season been this year? Let's ask a very basic one.
Oh, yeah.
How's the year been?
I, it's been a bit of a struggle, but a good struggle in the sense we've had lots of rain, which we haven't had rains like this for quite a few years, and so things are wet. So getting back into the field has been difficult. Organic as well. We do a little more cultivation than normal, and so then you just once you've cultivated, you just get a muddy mess. Then if it keeps raining on it. But we do have everything in, and we are getting close to where I'd say we're caught up, and then haying season will start. It's going fairly well.
We've actually had a excellent start this year. It was cold, kind of cool and wet to start, but honestly, right where we are down in the southwestern Ontario, it's been almost perfect on the sand. The crops look excellent. The farmers on the clay to the west of us have not had it so good. They've had to do a lot of replanting and those kinds of things. It just depends on where you sit and where you stand.
Okay. Yeah.
I was in Regina, in Saskatchewan last week, and they've got lots of moisture. They just need the heat now.
Mhm.
And I'm in Winnipeg next week, so I hear southern Manitoba's got a bit too much water in places. So
We're supposed to get heat next week, so things will take off. Yeah.
Right. So once again, thank you so much, Roger, for sharing how you got started in farming and how you've been implementing technology and really the viewpoint of the farmer, because that's what this working group is about, is getting to the farmer and getting the technology that you actually need to run your farm to be efficient as well. So we appreciate you taking the time. I know it was a little bit early for you in your time zone as well, but we appreciate you coming on and telling your story. So thank you. I just want to take a minute to ask, John Warbick is our newest member as well. If you want to come on or off mute to introduce yourself and maybe say what you're looking to get out of this group as well. think he might be having issues with his mute. Um, We'll introduce you to the next meeting if you're not able to speak as well. So a couple of events in the chat to pay attention to. Dan put the link to his Vineland Research greenhouse forum that is happening in September. So please check out that link there as well. And then I also put the registration link for the AgRobotics Working Group Demo Day at Simcoe in the chat as well. So if you have not registered yet, there's the link right there to register as well. Again, it's a free event, and we would love to see as many members from this group out at that location as well. Next week, we have a guest speaker from Greece, Eden Core. They will be talking about their AI vision system and how they link it to crop monitoring as well. So stay tuned for that next Friday. Other than that, I think that is the end of the agenda. So hope everybody has a great weekend, and then I will see everybody next Friday.